From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.
Good day. This is Dateline Malacañang. Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Monday engaged in a discussion with Peter Gumatautau, Director of the Asia-Pacific Center for Security Studies or APCSS, as part of the Daniel K. Inouye or DKI speaker series hosted by the APCSS in Oahu, Hawaii. Dubbed Perspectives on a Secure, Stable, and Prosperous Indo-Pacific, the discussion focused on the security challenges arising from the heightened tensions on territorial claims in the West Philippine Sea or WPS, as well as other security concerns in the Indo-Pacific region. The DKI-APCC serves as a forum for military and civilian leaders from the Indo-Pacific to engage in discussions regarding regional and global security issues. Its primary goal is to promote a free and prosperous Indo-Pacific by advocating for collaborative and inclusive security. Through its programs, the Center aims to advance cooperative strategies and policies based on trust, critical thinking, and shared experiences. Let's listen to the speech of Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., followed by the discussion with APCSS Director Peter Gumatautau as part of the Daniel K. Inouye or DKI speaker series.
Director of the DKI APCSS, Director Pete Gumatautau. The DKI Institute Director, Jennifer Sabas. The APCSS Foundation President, Gerald Sumida. Her Excellency, Mary Kay Carlson, the U.S. Ambassador to the Philippines. The U.S. Indo-PACOM Commander, Admiral John Aquilino. Members of the Philippine delegation, other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. And I think the traditional greeting is aloha.
Aloha.
I am very pleased to be able to speak with you today here, especially since it is a particular pleasure that I am here at the Daniel Inouye Center. As has been mentioned, Senator Inouye was a great friend of my father and, equally importantly, a great friend of the Philippines. As a matter of fact, one of his last acts in Congress that involved the Philippines was that he was able to finally arrange for the back pay of the so-called Bolo men that fought together with the Americans during the Second World War. And I wrote him a letter and he responded to me, and we were both very, very pleased and just a little bit sorry that my father was not here, was not around to note what had been achieved and what he had been working for since the end of the last war. So this event caps the 6-day, 3-city working visit to the United States, which I have just undertaken. It is my third visit since I assumed the presidency in 2022. This Honolulu leg is, of course, a bit of a special one for many reasons. First of all, Hawaii is home to a significant number of Filipinos and Filipino Americans, many of whom, the original immigrant workers, came from my home province or my home region of Ilocos Norte, which is the northern part of the Philippines. The Ilocos-Hawaii connection began here with our so-called sakadas, or workers, arriving in 1906 as plantation workers. And then, as events conspired, Filipinos were also fighting shoulder to shoulder with American soldiers during the war. Today, Honolulu hosts the headquarters of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, the long-standing partnership between the armed forces of the Philippines and the Indo-PACOM have resulted in enhanced coordination, interoperability, and individual and joint defense capabilities. This is to ensure that we both uphold our commitment to our treaty alliance, especially in the face of growing and evolving regional and global challenges to our security. It's no coincidence that I spent this morning, before coming here, with Admiral John Aquilino. We had a very productive and useful exchange on regional developments and the critical role of the Philippine-U.S. alliance to promote peace and to safeguard the international law-based order, to ensure resilient, sustainable, and inclusive growth for our economies and our communities. It is the third visit that I have made to the United States since becoming president. And in this visit, I have had the privilege to speak about my vision for the Philippines and the world through the platforms provided by the Asia Society in New York, the CSIS in Washington, and now here in the APCSS here in the Aloha State. My message has always been firm, simple, and clear. The Philippines will continue to be an engaged and responsible neighbor and partner, always finding ways to collaborate with the end goal of mutually beneficial outcomes, namely peace, stability, and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region. It is through working together, guided by the rules-based international order, that we can ensure an environment that will allow our countries and our peoples to prosper. That has been the raison d'etre for my foreign policy of peace. There are many challenges, however, in the roads towards that peaceful and prosperous future that we envision. Signs of another nuclear and space arms race are hovering over us. We are caught between the dual challenge of opportunity presented by advanced and emerging technologies, chief of which, of course, is AI. Smaller countries like the Philippines are grappling with the need to enhance our security capabilities alongside allies and partners and amidst larger regional players. So allow me this afternoon to speak more specifically about the two challenges that I believe are the most crucial to our common aspirations now. Number one is securing the peace in the West Philippine Sea. The Indo-Pacific region, particularly the West Philippine Sea, is in the middle of a global geopolitical transformation and has become an arena of normative contestation. Tensions in the West Philippine Sea are growing, with persistent unlawful threats and challenges against Philippine sovereign rights and jurisdiction over our exclusive economic zone and the continental shelf. Actions that violate obligations under international law, particularly the 1982 UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, and the 2002 Declaration on the Conduct of Parties in the South China Sea. Our regular routine and resupply missions at Ayungin Shoal are subjective to coercive tactics and dangerous maneuvers of Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels in the West Philippine Sea, putting the lives of our people at risk and challenging the rule of law in that has defined our baselines, our economic zone, and the maritime territory of the Philippines. There is rampant, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing and militarization of reclaimed features in the South China Sea. There have been recent missions to Escoda and Romulo Reef, which revealed a direct correlation between the presence of maritime militia vessels and reef damage in those features. If only for that, the impact on biodiversity and the environment I'm afraid, are assessed as possibly already irreversible. This imperils livelihoods, this imperils the future generations of Filipinos. So I have said it before, and I will say it again. The Philippines will not give a single square inch of our territory to any foreign power. The law is clear, as defined by the UNCLOS, and the final and binding 2016 award on the South China Sea arbitration. Supported by the rules-based international order and our growing partnerships, both time-tested and new ones, we will insist on the preservation of the sovereignty and integrity of the country, while working closely with international partners in the bilateral, regional, and multilateral settings in developing rules and processes to address these challenges. We appreciate certainly the concrete manifestations of the U.S. and the growing number of our other partners in support for the Philippine position. The strong, factual messaging in support of our lawful exercise of our rights under international law, and which will call out recent incidents in our EEZ. It demonstrates the strength of our alliance and partnership and challenges attempts to perpetuate false narratives. That has become a very important front in all of these events that are happening in and around the Philippines. But unfortunately, rhetoric is not enough. We need to upgrade our defense and civilian law enforcement capabilities, not only to defend ourselves, but also to enable us to become a reliable partner in promoting and guaranteeing regional security. That will require greater substantial infusions into funding streams needed for our armed forces and Coast Guard modernization plans, including lines of effort to enhance cyber cooperation. I am optimistic from our recent engagement with our American counterparts, including U.S. legislatures and certainly in the executive department, to elevate our partnership and dedicate resources to match our commitments. Over the past week, our teams have been working on a bilateral planning and tracking mechanism that is expected to accelerate concrete and substantial capability development investments and activities in order to meet our shared defense and security objectives over the next 5 years. Our defense secretaries also just met in Jakarta on the sidelines of the ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting Plus to discuss efforts to further strengthen our alliance. The second item that I feel is very important is the securing strategic sectors and critical infrastructure, and especially as we have all begun to recognize the importance of activities in cyberspace. At the same time, ladies and gentlemen, we also need to address broader notions of security, and that now will include economic security. We welcome public-private partnerships, particularly engagements between and outside our military and defense establishments. For example, the Aguila Subic Shipyard project supports Philippine efforts to position Subic Bay as a logistics hub and complements Haider readiness and initiatives. USAID development projects can also be harnessed to help boost our economic resilience. We hope to expand these partnerships in critical and strategic sectors and infrastructure. Just the other day, I witnessed on the sidelines of the APEC summit in San Francisco the signing of the Philippines-United States Agreement for Cooperation Concerning Peaceful Uses of Nuclear Energy, or what is more commonly known as the 123 Agreement. This opens the doors for U.S. companies to invest and to participate in nuclear power projects in the Philippines. This is expected to boost national efforts towards securing an affordable, reliable, and sustainable energy supply. Our cooperation on cyber security is also a priority, as it impacts both national and economic security. Critical infrastructure, whether with respect to ports, to energy, telecommunications, they will require cybersecurity measures to be in place for the country to be resilient. These systems form the backbone of our military infrastructure, our hospital systems, our agriculture, manufacturing, services sectors. In September, we launched the 2023 to 2032 National Innovation Agenda and Strategy document. This is the Philippine government's 10-year innovation plan, establishing the country's goals and strategies to improve innovation, governance, and establish a dynamic innovation ecosystem in critical areas. Learning and education, for example, health, food, agribusiness, finance, manufacturing and trade, transportation and logistics, public administration, security and defense, energy, blue economy, and water supply. We anticipate many areas where the U.S. as a leader in innovation and emerging technology can also be our major partner. Our teams are looking to convene the inaugural interagency PHUS Cyber Dialogue sometime early next year to follow through on our commitment to enhance cooperation in the face of new and emerging threats, including completing a full assessment of the cyber threat landscape and the establishment of next steps to counter cyber threats. So friends, ladies and gentlemen, these challenges will continue to evolve, but I am confident that together we will be able to manage them. Our alliance is stronger than ever because it has been founded on our shared values, our mutual respect and trust of each other as equal sovereign partners, and the unbreakable bonds between our two peoples. Our recent engagements across branches and levels of government confirm that we are committed to this relationship for the long term. At the same time, our growing network of partners, including Australia, Japan, the Republic of Korea, the UK, European Union, will serve as force multipliers, which will help us bring our country closer to the vision of a peaceful, secure, and prosperous nation within a secure and prosperous region. So I hope to continue this dialogue with all of you as we make our way on this principled path that we have chosen. We today are defining the future for ourselves in our lifetime, but also for the generations to come. Thank you very much. Mahalo nui loa.
Sure. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for those incredible insights and perspectives and your vision for the future and how we can collaborate to make it a more secure and stable and prosperous region. Before I start with some questions, and I'll tell you how the questions got synthesized, but I couldn't help yesterday, your team came in here and started to put all these little artifacts. I know some of the folks in the back can't see it, but Your Excellency, can you explain any of these artifacts that are up here?
These are jeepneys.
We know about jeepneys.
If you don't know what a jeepney is, these are the jeeps that were left behind by the Americans after the war, which were converted into transport systems. And they comprise a very large percentage of our transportation system. And the reason that we are highlighting them is because we are in the midst of an effort to go fully electric when it comes to public transport. This is our continuing effort as a response, of course, to climate change, to improve the mix of energy consumption and supply from the traditional fossil fuels to more renewables. We have been reasonably successful. We are presently approaching 30% in terms of the energy mix, 30% renewable in terms of the energy mix of the country's energy supply. And that is why we put them out here to remind all that despite their very traditional look, they are being heavily modernized.
Yes, sir. And I just came from the Philippines, and I have to tell you this. Yeah, these are definitely still there. And people are using it. So, well, thank you for that, really. And for the audience, what we have done for purposes of time is we have many folks that we've invited to present us with a question, and our team synthesized it And just with the constraint of the time that we have, I understand it, sir. I'll try to ask as much as I can before we have to terminate.
I shall try to be brief.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Your Excellency, your comment about the critical challenges that we face out there was pretty vivid in terms of what we all face. Yeah. But you also talked about opportunities and how you seek to resolve disagreements through peaceful means. So I was wondering if you can elaborate on this relationship. I understand you met with the Admiral Aquilino and his team today and during your time here. Perhaps share with the audience some of those initiatives that you're looking at with the United States regarding promoting better cooperation and collaboration in the future.
Well, the basic idea, of course, of all of this is that the United States is our, I would say, our oldest and most traditional partner that has been in various forms ongoing for over 100 years. And I think it serves us well to remember that the United States is the Philippines' only treaty partner. And that is why that with the increasing the heightening tension in the West Philippine Sea, as we have named it, because it is generally known as the South China Sea, the increasing tensions in the South China Sea require that we partner with our allies and our friends around the world so as to be able to come to some kind of resolution and to maintain the peace. And as I mentioned in my remarks, really what the foreign policy of the Philippines is really rather simple. And it really comes down to two things. Number one, peace, and number two, the national interest. And in that sense, we no longer subscribe to the old thinking, wherein it is a bipolar world, and each of the countries will choose whether to be with the Soviet Union or to be with the United States. I do not think it is not, in my view, this is no longer applicable, no longer relevant to the way the state of affairs as they have evolved geopolitically. So it is important that we continue to strengthen that partnership. And the main partner of the Philippines is, of course, the United States. But starting with that, we also feel that it is the way forward is to strengthen our partnerships in all, with all our neighbors and with all friendly nations who share our ideals, who share our aspirations, who share our values, and the respect for the international rule of law. And this has been something that we have tried to develop, and we have, I believe, have had some measure of success, and we will continue to do this. But again, the bedrock of any of these partnerships is the partnership and the treaty arrangement that we have, the mutual defense treaty that we have with the United States. And in that regard, we are continuing to increase our capabilities so as to be able to answer the challenges that we are facing now it's becoming more and more often. Every so often, whenever there is a confrontation between outside forces and Philippine forces. This is, unfortunately, as I have said to some of our partners, unfortunately, I cannot report that the situation is improving. The situation has become more dire than it was before. The nearest reefs that the PLA have started to show interest in terms of slowly using these atolls, these shoals, as a basis for building. Basis really is what they are approaching, have come closer and closer to the Philippine coastline. And the nearest one is now around 60 nautical miles from the nearest Philippine coast. And this is an evolving situation. If you will remember, the Spratly Islands was used by the U.S. Navy as a bombing range for a very long time, and so there was no question that this was part of the Philippines. Now they have fallen into the hands of a foreign power, and many of these features that are in the West Philippine Sea are slowly being turned into bases. Really, Admiral Aquilino just showed me a relief sort of map, not map, but model of one of them. And it is remarkable how the extensive construction and the level of commitment that has been made to those military bases. And so it's not, it is something that in our view, of course, the United States, once again, is the bedrock, is the foundation for all that. But the more allies we find to speak up whenever such incursions occur, such incidents or events occur, then I think the stronger that voice will be. And so we have encouraged that to a great deal. The United States, of course, has been there. And in every instance where we have had trouble, the U.S. has always been behind us in terms of support, not only in terms of rhetoric, but also in terms of concrete support. But that also applies now to Australia, to South Korea, to Japan. We are now in the midst of negotiating our own code of conduct, for example, with Vietnam, because we are still waiting for the code of conduct between China and ASEAN. And the progress has been rather slow, unfortunately. And so we've taken the initiative to approach those other countries around ASEAN with whom we have existing territorial conflicts, Vietnam being one of them, Malaysia being another, and to make our own code of conduct, and hopefully this will grow further and extend into the other ASEAN countries. And at the very least, we have that basis between not only in the multilateral sphere, as in ASEAN, APEC, all of these other organizations, but also bilaterally with the different countries that around ASEAN who we have conflicts with, but whom I think we can find a way to maintain the status quo, and certainly the most primordial concern is to maintain the peace.
Thank you, Mr. President. When I listened to you and how you repeated actually some of the key tenets of what you were saying in your speech, I remember just a recent visit I had in Manila and speaking to not just General Browner, but your Secretary of Defense, Teodoro, and others. That is a consistent message of your firm resolve to work things peacefully, but to work with the United States and other like-minded partners around the region, particularly in Southeast Asia. I would also offer you, when you talked about the rules-based order, international order, and how you've got the favorable findings from the Tribunal Court of Arbitration in 2016, that all underscores what we are all trying to do, which is to maintain that peace and prosperity, but following the rules-based international order. Now, you mentioned something in your speech, and you covered it quickly, but I think every country is wrestling with it in terms of technology, emerging technology. How do you view that strategically? How can you leverage technology in terms of building and enhancing relationship and cooperation with other countries?
Well, I think it applies to essentially every sector. One of the great events in the recent past has been COVID. And COVID showed us a new way of doing everything. It showed us a new way of living, a new way of working, a new way of interacting with one another, a new way of living. And that has been brought about, those solutions have been brought about by technology. So if we go to another sector, which applies to every other single sector that we ever discuss in government, and that's climate change. Climate change was brought about by burgeoning technologies, which we did not realize were going to poison the planet to this extent over 200 years or so. But then we also look to technology to bring us the solutions for this existential challenge that we are all facing. So let's bring it back now to the question of security. Again, technology, I think, will provide many of the solutions. But of course, at the very beginning of all that is the resolve of each country in partnership with other countries to continue to maintain the rule of law and to do that in the interest of peace. And that is what we have been trying to promote. And I do believe, I am very encouraged by the discussions that we have had, not only with the US, but with other countries, that this, it is well understood that this is in fact the way forward, that we must collaborate to bring those technologies to the fore so that our people can reap the advantages of that. Now, the latest technology that everyone, of course, is looking to, as it is exceedingly powerful, is AI. And we have just received the news that there has been within the AI community this conflict as to whether or how far to push it without regulation. I know President Biden has just signed a document that says that this must be regulated, monitored, and regulated properly. Because we have seen the rather more sinister uses of artificial technology. On the other hand, we must always remember it is a double-edged sword, and it can swing in a way that will help us. And I think if we are trying to transform our economy in the Philippines, as we all are, as a matter of fact, after COVID, in the face of Ukraine, and now in the Middle East, we have tried to bring these new technologies into the fore. But once again, we have to be more cognizant of what are the risks involved. And the reason that it is so difficult is because these things never existed before in human history. And we are making this up as we go along, as it were. And there are very many unintended consequences to something quite so powerful. Once again, just look at the Industrial Revolution. There was no way that when the Victorians started the Industrial Revolution, that they would say 200 years down the road, we are going to have to think about global warming. We're going to have to think about melting the ice in the poles. So we have to be extremely careful. And also because technology has evolved so rapidly. And that is another reason that we have to pay a good deal of attention to it. Because we will easily be left behind. If we rest on our laurels and say we've got this figured out, that is the moment that we get into trouble. And so we continue to look to the United States and to technology leaders like the United States to provide the guidance and to the lessons, rather, that you have learned being at the forefront, and both the good lessons and the lessons that were not quite as successful. And hopefully apply that in the Philippines. And again, with the discussions that we have had with the US and with other countries as well, I feel confident that so long as we are aware that there is a possible danger and we think things through properly, then we will be able to take full advantage of AI and of other new technologies. On the other hand, if we sit back and just let it take over our lives, that is exactly what it will do. It will take over our lives.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm pressed for time, but I need to ask this because I heard you say ASEAN. I know the Philippines is a founding member of ASEAN, and I think in 2026 you will assume the position of chair.
That's right. Yes.
We all know in the audience regarding what happened in Myanmar and how the juntas have really, their actions in Myanmar really undermined the centrality and just the basic understanding between the ASEAN countries. It may be too far ahead to ask in terms of in your role as the ASEAN chair, but what were you thinking as the leader of the Philippines to be looking to help ASEAN grow into an adaptive role, particularly in terms of what has happened in the region that kind of destabilized it?
Well, in terms of Myanmar, it has really been a difficult problem for the whole of ASEAN. For one thing, there are different conditions. For example, Myanmar, when there's fighting in Myanmar, the refugees cross over the 2,000-mile border that Thailand has with Myanmar, and they have that particular problem. Then there are Islamic countries in ASEAN who also have an interest because of the persecution that is being seen on the Muslim communities in Myanmar. The general approach until quite recently has been to write down the 5 points of consensus as we have for ASEAN. Everyone has signed off on it. In fact, even Myanmar has signed off on it. And continue to work with the leadership and also the opposition to that leadership, so as to have some kind of a balanced discussion. Unfortunately, we really have to admit that we have not made very much progress, even since the writing of the 5 points of consensus that ASEAN has agreed upon. So there has been a significant shift that really occurred in the last ASEAN under the chairmanship of Indonesia, where it became very clear, and upon the urging actually of Han Seng of Cambodia, and his argument went like this, and I said, and he says that when I became leader, nobody wanted to talk to me because I was not regarded or recognized as the leader, and he says, but who else will they talk to? And so now they spoke to me, and we have found a way to work. The different countries around have found a way to work. And this is the same situation as in Myanmar. If you insist on only handling these issues at a very high level, which is what the principle was in the beginning, that we only talk government to government, ASEAN to government. And unless there's progress made on that front, then there is no progress made. So the shift has come. And we now, under the informal auspices of ASEAN, each country is allowed to make approaches to the Myanmar leadership and the opposition, all the stakeholders in Myanmar, to try and find a solution to the problems that are being faced. And as in any conflict, the humanitarian side of it, the humanitarian cost has grown exponentially over the past 2-3 years, and so that just makes the situation even more urgent than it was before. So we have encouraged a slightly different approach. The Philippines is playing its part, and we have an interest in the Myanmar conflict for the simple reason that it affects the Philippines as well. And not in terms of actual fighting or refugees, but in terms of things like human trafficking. We have had to rescue many of our nationals from Myanmar and bring them back to the Philippines as they were human trafficked. They had been trafficked to work in usually illegal activities. So there is a great deal of impetus for ASEAN to solve this problem. But it is a very, very difficult problem, as it has involved other players, and it's not just the leadership in Myanmar. One of the most disturbing analyses that we have seen is that actually the military junta has lost support from its own military, and it only carries on with their militaristic and really terroristic activities by air power. And that air power has been provided not by Myanmar itself, but from foreign countries. And that is why I proposed, I said, maybe it's time to talk to those who are supplying the arms, or those who are supplying the airplanes and the bombs, and to say that we have to find a way to bring a hiatus, at least a hiatus to this, to try and do something about the humanitarian problem. And then perhaps that will be a first step. And once we are discussing that, and once we are more active and allowed to operate more within the country, and to have more contact and more communication, perhaps that will lead to something else. And so that presently is the state of affairs for ASEAN when it comes to Myanmar. When the chair comes to the Philippines, when the ASEAN chair comes to the Philippines, this is still what we intend to promote within our neighboring countries, and to find a way. I always quote. I'm a great believer that you should try everything everywhere all the time, simply because you cannot predict by any stretch of the imagination where it will succeed. And my best example is always, who would have thought that diplomatic relations between the US and China would come about because of table tennis? But it did. And so let's try everything. Let's talk to our friends, perhaps our adversaries, but try everything. And that is what we will try to promote. We are perfectly aware of the history of such negotiations. And for example, the peace treaty that was in fact signed in Oslo, that was unofficial between in the Middle East. And again, the China-US. And there are many examples of this. And that's why when the chair comes to the Philippines, we will once again remind our partners and say that we should not be too picky about how we get in touch or how we communicate with the military leadership in Myanmar, on how we negotiate and how we discuss with the other stakeholders. Because it's not just the political opposition. Unfortunately, both sides in this conflict, both the military junta and the opposition, the political opposition, have taken on a very, very hard line. And they will not speak to one another. And perhaps that's the role that ASEAN can play, is to come in between the two parts and hopefully bring them together, if not totally, but at least in certain ways. And start the process. There is no process as yet. Start the process, and hopefully it will bring a more equitable and peaceful situation in Myanmar, to the benefit of all of us in ASEAN and all of Asia, for that matter.
Well, Your Excellency, your insights, I must say, is very refreshing and encourages all of us to work harder to collaborate to this vision that you've laid out. And I truly think we must try everything. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me give a round of applause to Mr. President.
You just heard Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., followed by the discussion with APCSS Director Peter Gumatautau as part of the Daniel K. Inouye or DKI Speaker Series.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Sunday met with members of the Filipino community in Honolulu, Hawaii, and highlighted their huge contributions to the economic development of the United States island state. In his speech at the Hawaii Convention Center, the president said that for over a century, the presence of Filipinos has become a part of Hawaiian culture, including in various industries such as tourism, health, education, business and political representation, and even food. President Marcos took the opportunity to thank those who helped his family during their stay in Hawaii and for the support he got during the election. President Marcos's visit in Hawaii is the last stop of his week-long trip to the United States, following his attendance at the 30th Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation or APEC Economic Leaders Meeting and related activities in San Francisco and his working visit to Los Angeles, both in California. Let's listen to the speech of Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
And let me say what I have waited very long time to say. Aloha. Alam niyo po, I'm sure that they have told you, we have just come from San Francisco in Los Angeles. San Francisco, we attended the APEC conference. At yung mga lahat ng bansa na nakapaligid sa Pacific Ocean and in Asia were there, and it was very important for us to be there. But on the way back, I was told, they said, we can fly directly from San Francisco to Manila. And I said, but Honolulu is Hawaii is in the way, on the way. So I said, we have to go down, we have to land in Hawaii. I have to say hello to all our friends in Hawaii because Honolulu, Hawaii holds the Filipinos and the Filipino Americans in Hawaii hold a very special place in my heart as for all the wonderful experiences that we had here with our Filipino compatriots. That's why, generally speaking, when I come up to speak, I start by introducing our delegation that are here with me. But since this is a special place and it has holds special memories, I will turn it around a little bit. I want to introduce you to them. These are the people that kept us alive for 6 years. We landed here in Honolulu with nothing, My family was flown from Malacañang Palace to Hicam Air Force Base. And when we finally moved to Makiki Heights, kayong lahat, nakikita ko kayo, nandun kayong lahat. I know they were always there. We had nothing with us. They kept everything to inspect everything. These are the people who kept body and soul together of the Marcos family. When I tell this story, people do not quite believe me. But I tell them, you do not realize how close we became and how kind and how generous the people, the Filipinos, Americans in Hawaii were. PSC, mga PSC, dating PSC. Oh, kita mo? These are your predecessors. Ito yung mga dating presidential security. Hindi, ito mga naiwan na dito. Ito yung mga sumama sa amin. At they already found that thing. Pati po yung nag-entertain sa atin, si Florante. Matagal siya nandito. Lagi kami magkasama ni Florante nung nandito kami. And as I was saying, when I tell this story, people do not believe it. They do not quite believe it. But we landed here with nothing. Even ultimo yung damit namin, silang nagbigay. Silang nagpapakain sa amin. Pati yung mga appliance doon sa Makiki, silang nagdadala. At pagka kami nalulungkot, sila ang nagpapasaya sa amin. Kung hindi sa inyo, palagay ko, wala na yung pamilyang Marcos. Kaya hindi ko makakalimutan. On behalf of my entire family, wala na yung aking ama. But when my mother found out that I was coming to Honolulu, he said, you make sure that you go back to all of those people who went out of their way to keep us comfortable, to keep us alive, literally alive. And that is something that I will carry in my heart, that the Marcos family will carry in our heart. We tell our children about this and how wonderful you all were to us in the time that we were here. We could not have survived that very difficult period if not for you. And that's why when I was in San Francisco, I insisted we must pass by Hawaii, because even if I thank you every day for 1,000 years, it is not enough for all of the things that you did for us. Naalala ko tuloy yung mga sa Makiki, kung ano yung mga ginagawa. These are the leaders of the Filipino community. Yung iba wala na. Si Manong Joe wala na. Wala na, tumanda na tayo lahat, Manong. Naka-wheelchair na. But without you, siyang nauuna, siya talaga. Ang sabi sa akin, when I first arrived here, kausap ko si Uncle Coco, your father. And I said, bakit nandyan yung Jolaso? Sino ba yan? Sabi niya, nako, kung hindi lang pangalan mo Marcos, mas loyalista pa sa Marcos yan kaysa sa'yo. At yan ang mga tumutulong sa amin. These are the people who really were that we as a family, we as individuals, owe a debt of gratitude that we will never ever be able to pay. But now it's time to go back and introduce to you ang ating mga kasama dito sa delegasyon natin. Kasama po natin ang Speaker ng House of Representatives, Speaker Martin Romualdez. Andito rin po ang ating kalihim ng Department of Trade and Industry, Trade and Industry Secretary Fred Pascual. Kasama din po natin, at dahil meron tayong kaunting ugnayan dito sa militar ng US, habang kami nandito, kaya't nandito po ang NS chairman natin, Chairman Ed, where is Ed Anyo? Is here. Kasama din natin ang isang kilala ninyo, isang deputy speaker ng House of Representatives na tumutulong din sa atin dahil siya ay naging expert sa mga economic issues, at kaya't napakahalaga na kasama siya dahil yun ang aming pinag-usapan dun sa APEC. Ang ating Deputy Speaker at Congressman Ralph Recto, who is sometimes referred to as Mr. Vilma Santos. Well, we heard from the Philippine ambassador to the United States, Ambassador Babes Romualdez. Andito rin ang ating very important new department in the Philippine government, especially for the OFWs, for Filipinos who are living and working abroad. Ang ating pinakabagong departamento, ang Department of Migrant Workers, at kasama po natin si Undersecretary Patricia Yvonne Kaunan. Yan, pagka nagkakaproblema, kaya't gumawa na po tayo ng isang department para lang sa mga OFW dahil sa napakahalaga, the importance that we put to what the contributions are of our countrymen to the Philippines. Because many times we think that the OFWs are only here to work for their families, to help their families. Well, that is true. And maybe that is one of the original motivations. But in the process, of you helping your families, you also help your communities. And that is why we created the Department of Migrant Workers, so that we can be sure na lahat ng inyong pangangailangan, pagka kayo ay lahat ng maitutulong ng pamahalaan Pilipino ay ating gagawin, dahil napakahalaga ang inyong kontribusyon sa ating bansa. Kasama din natin dito is the Armed Forces Chief of Staff, General Romy Browner Jr. And ito, hindi na kailangan ipakilala dahil kasama ninyo lagi our Consul General to Hawaii, Emil Fernandez. At hindi ko makukumpleto ang aking pagpakilala kung hindi ko naman ipakilala ang aking may bahay, our First Lady Lisa Araneta Marcos. All the fellow workers that are with us, my fellow workers in government, ladies and gentlemen, naimbag na rabi, good evening po sa inyong lahat. So thank you once again for the very enthusiastic welcome. The First Lady and I and the esteemed members of my delegation are delighted to be back here in the Hawaii, in these islands, which many describe as a paradise. After my attendance of the APEC leaders meeting in San Francisco earlier this week, I made sure, as I said, that we come to Hawaii so that I could spend a little time reminiscing with all our friends here, and perhaps go around and look at the places where we used to spend time in the time that we were here. And many of you, we have all noted, many of you are also from, beforehand, started as all from the north, mga Ilocano. Nagaduti Ilocano dito. So, and that is why we have made it a point to come. Also, I wanted to come because we have been watching in the Philippines. Pinapanood namin ang mga pangyayari sa Maui. At kawawa naman ang ating mga Pilipino na naging casualty. And so before I proceed, let us share a moment of silence as we remember those who perished in the devastating wildfires in Maui last August. We pray for strength and courage for the relatives and friends of those fatalities, as well as those who are still recovering and rebuilding their lives in the aftermath of that terrible disaster. I truly appreciate seeing you all here to celebrate the close connection that the Philippines has with Hawaii. My wife Lisa and I bring the fond greetings of our family and the Filipinos back home. For over a century now, the Filipino presence here has become part and parcel of Hawaiian culture. From the various industries, tourism, health, education, business, and political representation, the Filipinos' mark can be seen and felt, and indeed, even tasted. I know that Filipino cuisine is a staple even among non-Filipino friends and family now. And with 25% of the population of the state of Hawaii having roots in the Philippines, our rich and diverse culture has become deeply intertwined in the social fabric of the Aloha State. That is how deep the connection between us has been and will always be. Over the years, Filipino Americans and Filipinos have contributed such a great deal to Hawaii's economic development. Our connection began when 15 sakadas arrived in 1906 as plantation work. They left sa Lumagi Port in Ilocos Sur. Yun yung una. Kaya yung ating, nung 2006, we were able to celebrate the 100th year. At yung mga kamag-anak ng mga unang sumakay na immigrant workers, plantation workers dito sa Hawaii, ay nakapag-celebrate kami. Kasama pa namin ang governor ng Hawaii noon. At dahil sa importansya na binibigay ng mga Hawaiano sa ating sa mga Pilipino ay hanggang Pilipinas nagkakampanya na ang mga American na kandidato ay para makuha nila ang boto ng Pilipino. At yan ang aming ginagawa nung nandito kami ni Manong Joe. At ino-organize namin ng mga Pilipino para naman mayroon tayong boses sa lahat ng mga nakikinig, lahat ng mga leadership ng Hawaii, ng Honolulu, at ng iba't ibang bayan sa ibang lugar. I remember talking to all of the governors and also the former mayor. If you remember, Mufi Haniman was the mayor for a while, and he was always saying that he's basically a Filipino. And that applies to not only the mayor but also all of the leadership na lahat naman sila ay pinalaki ng Pilipino. Kaya malapit sa puso nila ang Pilipinas. Subsequently, Filipinos fought shoulder to shoulder with American soldiers during the war. We see now many very successful second and third generation Filipinos, as well as present-day migrants who are an indelible part of our society. Because of you, the Philippines enjoys a very positive image in Hawaii. Thank you for all that you do for our country. And this is a characteristic that I have found everywhere that I go. And over the many years that Filipinos have been working abroad, and not only in the United States, not only in Hawaii, pero kahit saan ako pumunta, ay unang-una sinasabi, ang gagaling ng Pilipino, ang sisipag, ang babait, mapagkatiwalaan, at ang gagaling pa mag-English. Mas magaling sa amin mag-English. Kaya't naman, kinikilala na ang Pilipino dahil sa inyo. It is because of your hard work. It is because of your talent. It is because of your graciousness and your affection for those that are around you. Ang laging nababanggit na katangian ng Pilipino ay masyadong matulungin. At ipinapaliwanag ko sa kanila na meron tayo kasama sa ugali ng Pilipino, sa kultura ng Pilipino, yung tinatawag na magiging bayanihan. At hanggang sa lahat ng pinupuntahan ng Pilipino, ay dala nila yan. Dala nila yan ng ang pagkabayanihan ng mga Pilipino at kahit na, sinasabi nga nila, kahit na hindi sa trabaho na, basta't may nangangailangan tumutulong pa rin. Kahit hindi Pilipino, ang nangangailangan ng tulong, tutulungan ng mga Pinoy. Kaya't naman mahal na kayo ng inyong mga kakilala dito, ang inyong mga katrabaho dito, at hindi lamang dito sa Hawaii, kundi sa buong mundo ay kinikilala na ang Pilipino na dahil sa maganda ninyong ipinapakita at kami naman sa Pilipinas ay pinapalakpakan namin kayo kahit malayo at pinapalakpakan namin kayo sa inyong napakagandang ibinibigay at dinudulot sa reputasyon ng Pilipinas. I cannot go further without giving another word of thanks. Alam niyo po, nung kampanya, nung last year, nung kami nahalal ni Inday Sara, ay hindi kami nakapunta rito, hindi kami makapagbiyahe. Gusto sana namin magkampanya kung saan-saan dahil sa dami ng Pilipino na sa abroad. Ay naisana namin. Ngunit hindi namin magawa dahil may COVID pa noon at hindi pa lumilipad yung mga eroplano kaya hindi kami makapunta kahit saan. Doon lang kami sa Pilipinas muna. And yet, I am told that I garnered 83% of the votes in Hawaii and in America Samoa during the voting exercise of last year. Kaya kailangan ko magpasalamat sa inyo sa inyong tiwala na ibinigay sa amin, sa tiwala at suporta at pagmamahal na inyong pinaramdam sa amin. Kahit na hindi kami nakarating dito, ramdam na ramdam namin. Nakikita naman siguro ninyo yung mga mga programa, mga rally natin dun sa Facebook at live stream namin para nga makita ng lahat ng ating mga kababayan. Hindi nga namin magawa, kaya gumawa kami ng counting replica noong kampanya para naman kayo na hindi namin napuntahan ay makaramdam kayo ng konti na aming karanasan noong nakaraang halalan. Even from the time of my father, you have been by our side in our quest to serve the country. From the bottom of my heart, I must say that I thank you for trusting me, for believing in this leadership. In return, I and my administration will be hard at work and have been hard at work from day one to ensure that we accomplish all that we have set out to do. In San Francisco, I met with the leaders of other APEC countries where we discussed how to create a resilient and sustainable future for Filipino Americans and all the people of the APEC regions by making our economies interconnected, innovative, and inclusive. And I urge them to leverage APEC's core values, collaborate with the private sector, align efforts with global economic initiatives with a view to expand representation, strengthening government-business relationships, addressing protectionism, intervening when the market fails while continuing to enhance cooperation on a broader scale. It has become a very important part of the transformation of the Philippine economy that we are undertaking. And why is it that we have to transform the Philippine economy? Because COVID changed everything. COVID changed the way we work. COVID changed the way we live. COVID changed the way we interact with one another. COVID changed the way we do business. And we have to adjust accordingly. And the strength will come from these partnerships that we create with our friends and allies from around the world. Starting with APEC, with ASEAN, pati na sa UN, lahat yan ay talagang nilalapitan natin para naman pagka mas marami kayo na nagkakapit-bisig na nagtutulungan, mas matibay at mas mabilis at mas magiging matagumpay ang inyong mga ginagawa. So the Philippines' participation in this regional organization promotes and helps us achieve our national objectives. So I am happy to share with you that the Philippine economy remains strong and positive. In 2022, our gross domestic product grew by 7.6% from 5.7% in 2021. And in the first half of 2023, our GDP grew by 5.3%, which, if you compare it with many of our Asian neighbors, we are doing better than most of the world. Not only Asia, but we are doing better than most of the world. And I'm confident we will achieve our target growth of somewhere between 5 to 7%, 5 to 6% for this year, because we have you and your full support with your trade missions, your various business pursuits. Our economic managers project our GDP to grow by a very good number from 2023 to 2028. Ang aming target po ay mula 2023 hanggang 2028 ay lumaki ang ekonomiya ng Pilipinas net about by 6.5 to 8.0%. We are closely monitoring domestic and external developments to make sure that whatever policy adjustments that are necessary are in fact being made. Employment and jobs in the Philippines are now at historic highs. Tourism growth areas are back in business. Investment, registration activities have significantly increased. Manufacturing activity has accelerated, contributing to the highest share of GDP at 18.7% is the contribution in 2022. We continue to closely monitor the impact of global economic slowdown, and will facilitate diversification of external markets in order to expand opportunities for our exporters. We will still face many challenges in the economic sphere until next year, and in the following years, hopefully they will subside. But nonetheless, they will still be there. But you must rest assured that we are better equipped now and more resilient now to withstand various external and risks and challenges. With the active participation of all sectors of society, including overseas Filipinos, we can be on track in achieving social and economic transformation agenda towards a prosperous, inclusive, and resilient Philippines. There are so many things that we have to do. And that's why I cannot understate the need for us to be united. So I ask all of you, continue to be supportive of your government and of the Philippines. You have worked hard to build your lives here. You are the glue that holds us together. Let us keep traffic bustling between our two homes. Let us continue working together towards building a stronger Philippine Republic. I count on your support. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. Mabuhay ang Pilipino, mabuhay ang Pilipinas. Thank you very much. Mahalo.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has secured $672.3 million in investment pledges from various sectors during his successful participation in the 30th Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation or APEC Economic Leaders Meeting and related activities in San Francisco, California last week. The investment pledges secured are $400 million for the telecommunications sector, $250 million for semiconductor and electronics, $20 million in pharmaceutical and healthcare, $2 million for artificial intelligence or AI for weather forecasting, and $300,000 in renewable energy. President Marcos also secured significant commitments in technological advancements across key priority sectors in the Philippines, which include the deployment of the first 2 internet micro-geo satellites dedicated to the Philippines. He also received technology-related commitments, particularly in the development of Asia's largest AI-driven weather forecasting program for the Philippines, bolstering the country's resilience against climate change through the agreement between the Department of Science and Technology, or DOST, and the U.S.-based company Atmo. Also among the commitments concluded during President Marcos's APEC participation is the Philippines' inaugural specialty oncology hospital that will enhance service efficiency and accessibility for Filipino patients seeking cancer care, which was a subject of an agreement between Ayala Corporation Health and the Varian Medical Systems. The first U.S. FDA-approved manufacturing facility in the Philippines, which will bolster the country's global pharmaceutical industry presence through an agreement between Lloyd Laboratories and DifGen, was also secured. The agreement, covering the first phase for a project on sustainable energy, which will provide affordable and reliable power access through the agreement between Meralco and Ultrasafe Nuclear Corporation, was also signed. An additional investment of $1 billion for the semiconductor industry is up for discussion with U.S. companies. The Philippines and the U.S. have also agreed to work towards strengthening the Philippines' semiconductor supply chain.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Sunday visited the United States Indo-Pacific Command, or Indo-PACOM, in Honolulu, Hawaii. The President was met by Admiral John Aquilino, the 26th Commanding General of the Indo-PACOM. Accompanying President Marcos were National Security Advisor Eduardo Año, Department of Foreign Affairs or DFA Secretary Enrique Manalo, Philippine Ambassador to the U.S. Jose Romualdez, Armed Forces of the Philippines or AFP Chief Romeo Browner, House Speaker Martin Romualdez, and First Lady Luis Araneta Marcos. The Indo-PACOM houses over 380,000 employees, including soldiers, Marines, airmen, guardians, Coast Guardsmen, and civilian from the Department of Defense. The command is in charge of all military activities of the United States in the Indo-Pacific region, including 36 countries, 14 time zones, and over 50% of the world population. Admiral Aquilino accompanied the Philippine President along with his delegation for a tour at Ford Island. On board a VIP barge, President Marcos and the Philippine delegation went to the USS Arizona Memorial at Pearl Harbor, where he laid a wreath at the memorial where 1,102 of the 1,177 sailors and Marines died when Pearl Harbor was attacked by Japanese forces in December 7, 1941.
Dateline Malacañang.
And finally, the Philippine Fleet, or PF, acquired 2 more Fast Attack Interdiction Craft, or FAIC platforms, also known as the Acero-class gunboats, from Israel. In a statement, PF spokesperson Lieutenant Giovanni Badidles said, the gunboats were delivered Saturday through General Cargo Ship Cogra Royal and are now at the Commodore East Posadas Wharf in Cavite City for enhancement, maintenance, and training. The platforms will be commissioned as PG-906 and PG-907 under the Acero-class patrol vessels of the fleet's Littoral Combat Force. The delivery is part of the FAIC acquisition project of the revised Armed Forces of the Philippines or AFP Modernization Program Horizon 2, contracted with Israel shipyards, which includes a total of 9 platforms and the transfer of technology to bolster the Philippine Navy or PN's shipbuilding capability. With the delivery and pending commissioning of PG-906 and PG-907, the PN now has 6 Acero-class gunboats. The first 2 Acero-class gunboats, BRP Nestor Acero and BRP Loninato Toong, were delivered in September of 2022 and commissioned in November of the same year. The third and fourth FAICs, the BRP Hiner Tinangag and BRP Domingo de Luana, were delivered in April and commissioned the following month. The remaining 3 Acero-class gunboats are expected to be constructed and delivered within the next 2 years. 4 of the FAICs will be armed with non-line-of-sight missiles with pinpoint accuracy and a range of 25 kilometers, while the other 5 will be armed with Typhoon-mounted 30mm main cannons and 50 caliber heavy machine guns. The acquisition of the FAICs is among the 2019 projects approved by former President Rodrigo Duterte under the Horizon 2 list of the AFP Modernization Program. The notice of award for the FAIC-M project, worth around 10 billion pesos, was issued on January 5, 2021.
Dateline Malacañang.
Before we conclude our program, We would like to invite everyone to come and visit our Facebook page at Radyo Pilipinas World Service. You will be able to hear and view our Filipino and English programs, including news updates here in the Philippines. Kindly subscribe, like, and share our posts as well. And that concludes this edition of Dateline Malacañang. For Radyo Pilipinas World Service, this is Leo Magpayo. Good day and stay safe.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.